I'm Christine Manuck. I am the presenter for this workshop, and I'm also the host for this workshop, which means that I both get to give a presentation and also monitor the Zoom room. So we have one participant in Zoom. If you can't hear me, if you could type in a message in the chat, and I will try to address that. Or if you can't see our intro slide, also please make mention of that. And any questions or anything like that, you can put in the chat. And those who are here, you're welcome to just raise your hand, interrupt me in the middle of it. So I'm doing both. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Christine Manuck, as I mentioned. I'm the Assistant Development Director at NOFA Mass. You are attending the workshop, NOFA Mass Grant Funded Projects, Current Activities, and How to Get Involved, led by me. I am the Assistant Development Director, and I oversee the state and federal level grants and support development initiatives. My background is in farming, wetlands, soil, and plants, and I have extensive experience studying natural and agricultural ecosystems. So, as a grants person, I'm not usually a presenter. The person who usually does the presenter was just elected to the Vermont legislature, and so he is out being a legislator, and I have come up from behind a desk to give this presentation. So thank you for your patience with me. Before we jump in, I have a few details to review with you. NOFA Mass is strengthening our commitment to racial equity and justice by examining whiteness and dismantling systems of white supremacy that are part of many dominant systems, including our agricultural system and food systems. We want to honor the Indigenous land stewards who are the original occupants of the land that we are currently living on, farming, and residing on. Please take some time and visit nativeland.ca to find the original stewards of the lands. And I just want to make sure, can everyone hear me okay with my mask? Okay. Lastly, we want to call on everyone, especially white allies and co-conspirators, to action on a few items to assist BIPOC-led organizations. Actions are listed on this slide, and there are 2 events taking place for Spanish speakers and for BIPOC members during our winter conference today. You can find those from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock. We have a BIPOC caucus in Sheehan Hall in the multi-purpose room, and the White Ally Caucus is in the Sheehan Hall dining room. Finally, we want to thank our supporters, our sponsors. We have a number of sponsors who make the conference possible, and I encourage you to purchase from them and do what you can to know you appreciate their support of NOFA Mass. And we have a second level supporters. And I also want to encourage you to visit our NOFA Mass Winter Conference auction. We have some incredible items that Mike, our development director, set up for us. Some of them are really pretty exciting that should be worth bidding on and exciting to look at. Please also take some time to explore the virtual vendor marketplace, where a lot of the great information and some generous discount codes are available for conference and team attendees. Lastly, I want to thank you for spending the weekend with us and coming to our conference, and for members making our education and advocacy work possible. Okay. So starting on this presentation, as I mentioned, I'm the Assistant Development Director, and I'm just going to kind of overview some of the work that we are doing with our grants and working with farmers and trying to support farmers through the work that we do. Grants at NOFA Mass play a small but growing role in our funding and activities. Largely, these go to support our education initiatives, events, policies, and just support farmers as they explore and experiment other ways to experiment and work within their systems and expand their practices. Frequently, we are the primary awardee, but we are also working in conjunction with other organizations as sub-awardees. We are sub-awardees on a few different projects with American Farmland Trust, with the Pocasset Land Trust, PPLT, and a few other organizations. We get funds from both public, which are state and federal generally, and private foundation grants. I'm primarily going to be talking about our public funding today. Mike deals with our foundation level grants primarily. So some of the outcomes and beneficiaries from our grants include our expanded programming. This allows us to both have more staff on hand to increase what we're able to do overall as an organization, but then also increase the education events, the scope of the events, and just different opportunities that are available for our members and for farmers in the community. This allows us to have additional capacity to serve farmers and promote organic and regenerative farming practices. Benefits for farmers include learning groups. A lot of our programs have farmer to farmer peer groups where we meet regularly and allow farmers to discuss different things that we're working on. Specific farm insights where we work within each farm and visit farms to evaluate their soils and give them specific recommendations based upon their own practices. Working with farmers on production improvements and ways in which we can help them or they can learn more to be able to further improve their production. We also provide participation stipends, which helps to support farmers just, generally, but then also if they are trying to implement new practices. And then it also offers farmers the opportunity to positively promote their farm, their practices or their goods. This frequently can come through an event where people come and tour their farm and see the practices that they're doing. It can come through positive consumer outreach where we're working with consumers to promote the farms that we're working with. It can also come through newsletter articles or other events that we put on as a part of our grant deliverables. So we do receive a fair amount of funding from private organizations. These are typically foundation-based funding. These projects are of shorter duration, usually roughly about a year, sometimes less. And they are emphasize specific funding area or department. So these might go directly to fund our policy work, for instance, especially with our pollinator network, or some go specifically to food access or other parts specifically within NOFA Mass to fund our organizational and operational goals. And with this, we have slightly greater funding flexibility than we do with our grants that receive public funding or come from public funding. So this allows us to help support our greater organizational goals without having as many specific requirements associated with them. So some recent funding areas that are associated with foundation late-phase grants include our Massachusetts Pollinator Network. We have Dr. Rosemary Melfi who runs that. We have with monthly calls with the Pollinator Network and events, our Regenerative Food Systems Network, which Hannah, who is our NOFA staff here right now, she organizes. Soil health collaborations such as the Massachusetts Healthy Soils Program, which is in conjunction with American Farmland Trust. Increased racial equity work, which we are working on within our organization and through our members, and can be, you get this small experience in our conferences at 1 o'clock. And farm bill work, which our policy department goes to help support organic farmers and regenerative farming in Massachusetts legislature. So just as an overview of our public funding, we get state level and federal level funds from Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources, MDAR. Specific funding sources for these are the Specialty Crop Block Grant Program, the SCBGP, which is a mouthful for anyone after even saying it for a year, the Local Food Purchase Assistant Program, the LFPA. We are also working or looking into the Massachusetts Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, the EEA, for their Food Security Infrastructure Grant Program. And then regionally, we received funding from SARE, the Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education, with their partnership projects. And then federally through the USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and the Natural Resources Conservation Services, NRCS, for Conservation Innovative Grants, the CIG, the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, NEFA, Beginning Farmer and Rancher Development Program, BFRDP, Outreach and Assistance for Socially Disadvantaged and Veteran Farmers and Ranchers Program, the 2501, and the Farmers Market Promotion Program, the FMPP. So these are a big part of our public funding sources, and I know it's a lot of acronyms, but also some of these will come up a little bit too, and I'll try to refer to them as much as possible by their full names, just because I know it can be a lot. So grants have been really expanding at NOFA Mass. In the past year, we applied for 6 public funding sources, and we were awarded all 6 projects. So previously, we had 3 projects that ended in 2021 and 2022. And currently we have 11 projects that are ongoing. We have 7 new projects that have started since August 2022, and we have 4 projects that are ending in 2023. So we're really having a shift of funding that has allowed us to expand our grant work promotion or products and work within the organization. We also have some coming up on the horizon, the USDA Climate Smart Ag Partnership. This is a project that we're working on with CASA, Sustainable Agriculture in Pennsylvania. And we are also looking ahead to some state level funding opportunities from MDAR, including the Food Security Infrastructure Grant Program and the Specialty Crop Block Grant Program, SCBGP. Most of our funds are focused towards soil health. As you can see, with 42% of our funding going towards soil health related projects. But a large and increasing part of our funding is going towards our food access program. We've gotten a lot of great support for it over the past year or so, and it's hopefully going to increase the opportunities that we have to expand community gardens and just further support individuals served by our food access program. We also help farmers with use grants to help farmers with their management practices, exploring different practices and ways to potentially innovate on their farm as well. So just a little bit about some of our past projects. We were involved in the MDAR funded project that we nicknamed the Carrots and Spinach Project, which allowed us to have farmers correlate production with nutrient values in carrots and spinach. This was with a subcontractor with us who analyzed nutrient values of carrots and spinach samples that they were sent to by farmers, and then we were able to correlate their production and soil health practices with the nutrient values on their crops. Farmers participated in quarterly discussion groups to kind of help understand what different farmers were doing and ways in which they could learn from each other. And they also received stipends and soil testing and soil, which were through chemical analysis and soil carbon proxy testing by NOFA staff. We also had our Conservation Innovation Grant, CIG, which was NRCS funded, that ended last year as well. And this allowed us to encourage farmers to reduce tillage on their farms through farmer-supported learning, farmer learning groups, as well as providing them a small stipend to help encourage them to overcome some of the financial barriers associated with going to reduced or no-till. We had a cohort of 9 farmers who participated in the regular learning calls, and they also provided education opportunities such as on-farm events, webinars, workshops, and we provided them with regular soil carbon proxy testing over 3 years. This was done annually so that we could have a longitudinal study. And some of our findings showed that there was improvements in soil health over the course of the 3-year project. You can see in the table there that the depth to compaction, which is an indication of, it can be a production barrier. The depth to compaction increased. So there was more topsoil available for plant production over time, which is a good indicator for the no-till farms in terms of their growing soil health. Similarly, at one of our farms, you can see improvement in soil hardness, which is similar to soil compaction. And so these were just different metrics that we were able to evaluate for the farmers, and we were able to provide them with a report showing the changes in their soil health over time that they were able to then correlate with their production and hopefully make improvements that could further benefit them long term. Lastly, our bioremediation project finished up this past October. This was another MDAR funded project that worked in Springfield at 2 community garden sites. We're trying to find ways to productively grow crops at community garden sites with known contamination without having to resort to cap and fill and other commonly used urban mitigation strategies. And so we had Sister Anna Gilbert Muhammad, who is our food access director at NOFA Mass, was leading a group of Springfield-based youth and community residents. They learned about mycology and different plant bioaccumulators to help remediate the soil and allow increased bioremediation and healthy food production. So you can see here, this is the Franklin Street Community Garden site before the work actually started. It was during the transition into a community garden, had previously been a house and garage, and their high levels of pollutants, including lead. And then over time, as a result of the grant funding, they were able to transition it into a productive community garden. They used soil amendments that were recommended by advisors in year one. And then over time, by even year two, they were able to see increases in beneficial insects. They saw more diversity there, increased birds, increased wildlife. And eventually by year three, they were able to have a pretty good production and crop. They also noticed different soil growth and root growth from their plants, and it was a really beneficial transition that it was able to make. So now transitioning to some of our current projects, we have the SARE Soil Health Project. This is a SARE funded project that is in collaboration with the NOFA chapters in Connecticut and New York. NOFA Mass has trained staff for Connecticut and the New York NOFA chapters on soil carbon proxy testing. So that way we are able to help other NOFA chapters help their members with understanding their soil and the relationship with practices. We've been evaluating soil carbon at farms in Massachusetts over the duration of the 3-year project. We also have a longitudinal study going both in Massachusetts, Connecticut, and New York, where we are revisiting one farm over the course of the 3-year project to evaluate the changes over time. So this benefits farmers through getting to learn a little bit more about their soil. We're also giving free carbon proxy tests to farmers. So, farmers who are not even related to this project are able to learn more from it and have their soil tested. And it's a really low involvement project for farmers. It's an opportunity for them to be involved without having to take the time of, for instance, going to the learning calls or doing it. And it's a nice opportunity to increase our work and our exposure without really asking too much of the farmers. So some of the outcomes of this are carbon proxy testing on 24 farms over the southern New England region. The education materials and events that we are producing as a result of this funding that are occurring both in Massachusetts, Connecticut, and New York. And then the longitudinal study that we can publish and share, for instance, in the Natural Farmer or in our NOFA Mass newsletters to help other farmers learn from these experiences. And you can see here in the image, just the soil cover is one of the tests we evaluate as a part of the soil carbon proxy testing, and increased soil carbon or cover is generally associated with improvements in soil carbon. The MDR Soil Health Project is pretty similar to the SARE one that I just described. It's also related to soil health improvements. And our efforts to help farmers understand the relationship between tillage and management and their soil carbon sequestration and their soil health. This is a sub-award that we're on with American Farmland Trust that is funded by NDR. And this project is entirely based in Massachusetts. Our goal is to give guidance and direction to Massachusetts farmers to help them overcome barriers to adopting soil health practices. So again, as with the previous project, it has minimal farmer involvement, and really it's an opportunity for farmers to learn from farmers. American Farmland Trust has a peer-to-peer learning group that they've set up, as well as farm advisors that they've set up that a farmer who's interested in learning more about soil health related practices can contact and then kind of help each other learn from their own experiences. At today's winter conference in the student center on the 3rd floor, we have some farmers also on place or there to answer anyone's questions. So this is another part of that to help kind of promote soil health and help farmers adopt soil friendly practices. Farmers also receive soil testing as part of this. And the outcomes from this are education events, written materials such as newsletters, direct technical assistance, and farmer to farmer learning. And in the image, you can see the soil health field day that we had at Freedom Food Farm a little over a year ago. And this was a great opportunity for farmers to learn from Chuck Curry about the cut and carry system that they have there. That is another way just to kind of help farmers see some of the benefits and ways in which they can effectively promote soil health in their practices. We have the MDAR compaction project. This is one that is funded through a specialty crop block grant program from 2020. The goals of this is to help farmers understand soil compaction, and we are doing this through soil health evaluations, which are less comprehensive than our full carbon proxy tests, but are really more focused on compaction and helping farmers understand the problem of compaction and ways in which they can improve compaction where it occurs. So to achieve this, we have 7 farmers participating in a learning cohort, and we have twice yearly soil compaction testing and mapping. And so this is occurring in fall and spring. And then we also have farmers participating in education events as a way to help other farmers further learn about what the farmers that are in the cohort are doing and ways in which to address compaction on their farms. So some of the outcomes from this are education events and materials. We are working with a subcontractor who's producing heat maps showing temporal changes in compaction throughout each farm field. And then finally, we are going to have the compaction mitigation resource booklet, which will be widely distributed to help others understand the outcome. So you can see our soil technical services coordinator, Maria, using a soil penetrometer to measure compaction at Asawaga Farm. And this is just an example of one of the maps that we are having for farmers, or getting made for farmers. It shows the penetrometer reading most actively on those numbers at various depths, but we are able to produce these for each of the farmers so that way they can understand where on their farm the different measurements are occurring and have a way to directly correlate the findings with their production and where it's happening. The Sarah Mushroom Compost Project is a new one that started in August 2022. This is a SARE partnership project, and this is more of a research-based project than the other ones, and is more kind of innovating a different opportunity to use an existing byproduct. So we are taking spent mushroom compost, which is a byproduct of mushroom production, and combining it with finished compost to observe changes in microbial communities within the combined amendments, and using it as a compost amendment or soil amendment. So what we're doing is we're basically taking the SMS, the spent mushroom substrate, we're combining it with finished compost, we're mixing it for 2 weeks, and then farmers are applying it to their fields. The idea is that it will increase the microbial communities within the compost, and then those will go into the soil and further benefit the soil. So farmers are a little bit more involved in this one. They are taking a little bit more of a hands-on approach. We are helping to mix the compost piles for them, or the amendment piles for them, but then they spent 2 weeks of last fall evaluating the combinations the amendments once they've been combined. Farmers have also been participating in events. They are also applying the compost once it's applied, or once it's kind of inoculated for 2 weeks, and then they are also doing some soil and compost testing. Or we are doing the soil and compost testing for them, so they're getting the benefits and the results. They are also getting a stipend for their time and their work, and as well as just kind of, getting to participate in basically a little bit of a research experiment here. And some of the outcomes are the farmer connections. So we're making the connections between the farmers and the mushroom producer to hopefully create an outlet for the SMS, which otherwise doesn't really have a great outlet. We're producing education events, which hopefully help other farmers learn about this opportunity and the benefits from it. And we're doing a written summary and finding of analysis of findings. So again, you can see Ruben, he was helping one of the farmers participating in the project to mix together the piles. And Ruben is, I want to say our soil geek, but really he's we we have a lot of fun talking about soil, looking at soil together. And this was one of the pictures he sent to me of the compost and SMS mixed together after a little bit of time. And it just developed into this beautiful fungal abundant, really rich, deep earth amendment. So we're still processing the results from that, but we're really excited about the preliminary findings. We have our Elephant PA Farm Share project. This is funded through the MDAR Local Food Purchase Assistance Program. We received funding for this starting last December. And the goals of this is to kickstart the Massachusetts Farm Share Program. And the Massachusetts Farm Share Program will allow farmers to provide free or reduced cost CSA shares to low income households and communities. This is modeled after the Vermont Farm Share Program, if you are at all familiar with that. And at the outset of this program, what we were going to be doing is we're going to be using funds to pay farmers for their CSA shares. And then that will develop the network with farmers. We are going to connect them with community partners in the Berkshires, Springfield, Worcester, and Boston. And then the community partners will bring them or deliver them to 150 households in these vulnerable communities. So farmers are involved by providing the CSA shares, which we purchase from them. So it benefits both the farmers and the communities. And they will be working with community partners for the distribution in the sites. We're also going to be working with the farmers in developing solidarity share pricing. So solidarity share pricing is where their existing customers or new customers pay a sliding scale for their shares, with paying slightly higher if they're able to, or lower if they're not able to. And then this helps offset some of the expenses for the farm share program and supporting the households who are not able to pay as much. So the outcomes from this is to hopefully set up the Massachusetts Farm Share Program to work independently without external funding moving forward. So this is a map of the farms that we are currently working with and the distribution sites. The farms that we had signed on when we initially developed the proposal are shown in blue. We had Woven Roots Farm, Global Village Farm, and Oasis on Blue. Since receiving funding, we've also been in communications with some other farms, Organic Urban Farm, Mojitos in Winchendon, Cottolene Farm, and Sibling Organic Crops. And these farms are going to help us provide the CSA shares to communities and resident households in the Berkshires, Springfield, Worcester, and Dorchester. The MDAR Tapley grant is another MDAR funded specialty crop block grant program funding. It was awarded in 2021, but just because we were dealing with state funding, we didn't receive funds for it until last September. So it has also just started up in the last couple of months. The goal of this is to increase cultural crops in Springfield. So going back to the work that we were doing with bioremediation project with Sister Anna, we are going to additional community garden sites that she works at and working with the youth there and community residents to identify what crops are culturally desirable and that they would like to have grown. Then we are working with farmer partners to help produce them and establish youth programming to really get an autonomous youth production program within the community. We are also providing them with classes to help develop value-added products and marketing skills, so that way they can market and sell these products that are based on the farm crops. So the farmers are receiving the support from us and from their farmer advisors in terms of the actual production, as well as the marketing, the production classes to help take the produce that they're growing and be able to use it both for themselves, but then also sell it for a profit. Some of the outcomes include expanded production of culturally appropriate crops, education events, including workshops, webinars, and podcasts, and the farm to market product development. You can see in the picture, we have some youth from Home City Housing in Springfield We're selling some value-added products at Bambi Farm in Rhode Island. They're selling, I think, some picos and some sofrito there. And we also will have canning and preservation classes as a part of the project. And this is just some of the setup for what's been done in a previous class. They really do a fantastic job and help everyone be able to do it independently. Our newest specialty crop block grant program funding was for our agroforestry project. And the goal of this is to increase agroforestry in Massachusetts. The goal ultimately is both to support farmers and their agroforestry production, but then also to help consumers understand the demand for nut crops and the role that nut crops can play in agriculture in Massachusetts. So kind of both supporting the farmers, but then also supporting the market. So as you can see, so then we have the agroforestry support expansion through the farmer support, but then the agroforestry promotion through consumer outreach. Hannah, who was in here earlier during the talk, she's actually leading the consumer outreach part of this and also networking with the farmers as well to make sure that the farmer needs are understood by the consumers when she's out and talking with them as well. So farmers are participating in monthly learning group discussions, and this helps farmers who are probably experienced farmers, but inexperienced with agroforestry, learn more about how to develop agroforestry on their farm. We are working with Regenerative Design Group, led by John O'Niger, to develop agroforestry plans for each of the farmers participating in the project. So farmers are receiving both a participation stipend, but then also the actual plan, so that way when they're ready to go put trees in, they have the plan laid out. We are also doing soil health evaluations and education events on the farms. And so the outcomes of this are the learning group, the farmer learning experiences, public education, so that way hopefully we can increase tree crop interest in Massachusetts within consumers, the education events and materials, and then we're also going to produce a public facing document with agroforestry guidelines and templates, so that way someone who didn't participate in this project but is interested in possibly implementing agroforestry can take this and hopefully adapt it to their farm without having to pay for the expense of getting their own agroforestry design plan. So this just shows planting of chestnut trees at John O'Niger's farm. We have our BFRDP training grants in our 2501. These are two closely overlapping projects that we have from the USDA. They are both in conjunction with PPLT, the Pokanoket Land Trust, and they are in partnership with Global Village Farms and Nichols College. They're focused on Southern New England, and the goal is to increase involvement by BIPOC farmers and beginning farmers, particularly BIPOC farmers, as well as farmers with less than 10 years of experience. We are going to help support them by providing them with marketing, business classes, and financial management classes, as well as provide them with additional soil health and climate smart agriculture production or promotion to help them develop their production into a thriving business and support their management and overall production as much as possible. So we're developing farmer cohorts, and the farmers will go through training based upon their interests and their needs of marketing, business planning, financial management, and soil health. And they're going to be receiving a stipend to help support their involvement. And the outcomes that we're looking forward to are some of the farmer support, a reduction of barriers, trying to break down a little bit of the challenges that have been created, and then helping farmers develop financially and environmentally sustainable farm operations and ownership. So as a part of this project, Ruben's going to be doing some soil health training for farmers, and you can see him measuring soil aggregation as a part of our soil health assessment. We have our innovative grant, which is also a recent USDA funded project. This is from the Office of Urban Agriculture and Innovation Production. This is a planning project that we have to help increase community gardens in the Western Mass, Southern or Northern Connecticut area. We're going to be working in Hartford, Holyoke, and Springfield. And the goals of this are to basically create the foundation to increase community gardens in these regions. Sister Anna is going to be working with the food access team to network with existing community partners in the region and identify current community garden sites and new potential community garden sites. We will also evaluate any barriers to establishing the community garden sites and production. And this is where our bioremediation project is going to come back, where we can apply the findings that we had from there to hopefully create a healthy growing environment. The outcomes and products from this are to increase community food security and autonomy, allowing residents in areas that are food or with poor food security or access to grocery stores where they're in dead zones or grocery dead zones to be able to have control over their own food production and to be able to produce their own healthy foods. And also this is going to connect to our Tapley grant, where we are going to be encouraging them to grow culturally appropriate crops. So we're really seeing a lot of overlap with our projects. We're going to be producing education materials that can again help to support production of healthy crops within the community gardens. And then we're going to be creating a community garden best practices plan, which will allow help facilitate the production of future community gardens. And the image shows one of our youth leaders at Roca in Springfield, showing some of the crops that were harvested from Open Pantry Garden. All right, now upcoming, we have our Climate Smart Agriculture project. I mentioned this in the beginning of the slide, and this is one that's forthcoming. We are a sub-award on a project from CASA Sustainable Agriculture in Pennsylvania. We are going to be participating in this 5-year project that's going to begin in April 2023. Funding is secured, or just ironing out the details. And the goals of this are to expand the soil health benchmark study that CASA has been doing over the past several years. We're going to expand it into Massachusetts, and for this project, we're also overseeing the project in New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. So we'll be working in a large portion of southern New England for this. We're going to be encouraging farmers to implement climate smart agriculture practices. We will be getting some new staff people to help work directly with farmers for this project, encouraging the implementation of climate smart agriculture, as well as an additional staff person who will help promote the climate smart agricultural products. So similar to in the agroforestry projects, how we are increasing consumer awareness of agroforestry products, we're also going to be similarly promoting climate smart products through this way. So PASA's overall goal is to increase, to enroll 500 to 700 farms in their soil health benchmark study from Maine to South Carolina. So NOFA Mass thankfully will not be doing that many, but we will be doing a fraction of that in the area that we're working in. So this is a great opportunity to farmers to, if nothing else, have their soil health studied, but then also work with the additional staff people that will be coming on board to learn about different practices that they can implement on their farms to help their production and increase their climate smart practices. We're going to have some funding to help implement climate smart practices, which can tie directly into the findings that we have that we've made from the soil health study, as well as talking with farmers and their needs and goals. And this just kind of summarizes some of the areas of practice support that'll be targeted within the Climate Smart project. And then on the right side of the screen, it shows a sample of what the Climate Smart benchmark study overviews for CASA. CASA has given each of that, or a sheet like that to each of the farmers that are currently in their soil health benchmark study. And I think that this is a fantastic opportunity for farmers who participate in the study to be able to, for instance, bring this when they're at the farmers market, put it up on a board somewhere and say, we've done this, we've had our soil tested, we can show like our soil health is better than average because of the practices that we were doing, and you are supporting this through your production or through your consumption of our products. So I'm excited for this opportunity for Massachusetts farmers and, all the farmers in the region, as well as the opportunity to help support the implementation of the additional practices that the Climate Smart Ag Grant proposes. So that will be coming on over the next few months, and we're excited to roll it out. In terms of other upcoming state and federal grants, we have some new and recurring grants. We have funding through the MDR Specialty Crop Block Grant Program, which is an annual project program until MDR decides otherwise. We also have the SARE partnership grants, USDA funding opportunities, and others just as they come along. And so really NOFA Mass is looking to both continue to support farmers as much as possible and sustain our programming through education events and farmer support and outreach. And so we are able to use these to do so. In ways that farmers can get involved in existing and upcoming grants. So we have opportunities for potential involvement through existing grants, including the Farm Share grant, the BFRDP training and the 2501 grants, the innovative grants and the SARE Soil Health grants. And then also through upcoming grants, including Climate Smart Ag, and also by giving us ideas for potential new focus areas and funding opportunities. We're fortunate that we can expect the Specialty Crop Block Grant Program every year, and that we've been successful in receiving funding from it. But really, having a sense of what farmers need and how we can best support them can help us provide applications that can make sure that we have a good sense of what's needed and how we can best serve our community. So we are definitely eager to hear anything that, farmers have suggestions for and any ways that we can potentially support them. Yes, and participation is a big role in that. So participating in our events, participating, in our workshops and our conferences, and just, giving us feedback and input is a way to help us have a sense as to how everyone's feeling about things. So at this point, I'm kind of interested in opening it up a little bit and hearing what others would like to see. We kind of have a mixed crowd, I think. I don't know if you want to just kind of throw out ideas, if there's anything that anyone has interest in, or any questions at this point, but I'd love to hear any ideas if anyone has one. This can be interest in an event, interest in a particular practice area, or any other suggestion relating to what we're currently doing. And for those on Zoom, feel free to put a message in the chat too.
Spent mushroom substrate, adding it to the finished compost. That's a great idea.
Thanks.
Where are you guys getting your spent mushrooms?
Let's see. Not Full Moon Farm. Fat Moon Farm. Fat Moon Farm. I'm not sure exactly where it is. It's north of here. Ruben's in Leominster, and it's somewhere right near him. So Liz Alamedia is the owner there. But yeah, the mushroom project was Ruben's entire idea. Ruben is I want to call him a genius. He lives and breathes soil and microbes, and it's just his passion. It's so fun to talk to him about it. He's going to be over in the student center if you have some time and want to, but he had the great idea basically that there's this byproduct that's not really being used and is full of these fungal hyphae, and to be able to combine it with finished compost. I mean, the compost isn't going through the heating process, so you don't have to worry about them getting killed off, and then to be able to use them to inoculate the soil. So yeah, so he has gone through the data. We're still working and waiting on some of the soil health data, but then otherwise we're going to start analyzing it. The farmers applied or gave an application of the amendments in the fall, and then they're going to repeat that everything again in the spring 2023, and then again in fall 2023, and then that'll close out the project. And my background's as a scientist, and so my immediate reaction is we need to publish this so that we can tell the world about it. But We don't have enough funding about it for it at this point, but if we do get that amount of funding, then potentially like we can repeat it and, even get this peer reviewed and published, so that way it can expand beyond just like our community, because really I think this is a brilliant idea and a great opportunity that,
Awesome.
yeah, and
We've got some. Overs files, really wood chippy stuff that hasn't broken down, and we've inoculated that with some mushroom spores.
yeah,
But we haven't thought to use the spent mushroom substrate. And I also like that they're just mixing it with the finished compost, because that's what we would eventually like our overs piles to be able to do, but I think why not just go straight for it?
right, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, like the great thing about the SMS is, it's free. Like, it's not like you have to pay for it somewhere. So definitely, like, you can go talk to Ruben about it and, and if you'd like, I mean, I can take your information too. And actually, I do have, this is a good opportunity. I do have a sign up sheet if anyone wants to, potentially get involved, anything along those lines. And same in the chat, feel free to put your name in the chat and I can reach out to you. But yeah, and I mean, I think the important thing is just kind of like the critical thinking and analysis, like how can we think outside the box sometimes a little bit to help support farmers? And Ruben, being so close to soil health is a great example of that, but certainly we want to do that through pollinators. We want to do that through policy. There's so many different avenues through which we can do that and support farmers. And it's exciting to see the potential and the opportunities for that. All right, any other thoughts, questions, comments?
I just asked just because I don't know, and I'm like, what is spent mushroom substrate? I'm probably the only person in the room who doesn't know.
No, trust me, before I wrote the grant, I had no idea either. It is basically the wood chips that, or the sawdust that mushrooms are grown on for mushroom production. And it's, essentially used for 2 weeks during the production, and then I know at least for Fat Moon Farms that they basically just dispose of it.
Okay.
Other farms, I think, recycle it and use it for, I think, 2 or 3 cycles, but I know that Fat Moon Farm only uses it once just because they're concerned about contamination. That's the situation. So. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm just curious, these are really cool projects of like research and community development all put together. And I know a lot of them you end up creating like technical assistance or other written materials. What's the strategy right now for where those are published and how they're shared with farmers and sort of like how you spread that information?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have our monthly, or we have multiple monthly newsletters. We have a policy newsletter, we have our Be a Better Grower newsletter, and we have our food access team newsletter. And those are all published on the NOFA website. And then our other primary outlet is the Natural Farmer, which is the NOFA interstate quarterly publication. And so those have been our 2 primary outlets. I'm interested in kind of getting a little bit more mainstream for some of these things, particularly, for instance, for the agroforestry project. We've been talking about ways in which we can work to increase general consumer awareness of agroforestry products. And unfortunately, I think staying within our NOFA publications, like it's not going to get there. So then we're looking at newspapers and, other kind of local publications that can promote it. Again, as I mentioned, as research science backgrounds, my first thought is a research journal, but that's not necessarily always the best way or the only way. And so I think kind of promoting along those lines have been our existing plan, but I think we're looking to grow and expand our opportunities too.
I like the podcasts up there and webinars, just lots of different ideas for how to share information.
Yeah, definitely. And those are good points too, because we, our education events are really a big cornerstone of our offerings at NOFA Mass. And so we have a podcast that comes out every month. We have webinars that are kind of, we're not terribly consistent with them right now, but I think that we have the place where they could be more consistent and more regular. And I think with the right circumstances, for instance, I was mentioning our pollinator network calls are monthly. I think we'd probably be having monthly webinars, and our education events are primarily during the summer, but again, it can also kind of maintain the consistency to hopefully have a rolling network of just involvement and interest. We have a monthly soil health call. That's our min-till, low-till call that Ruben runs. That's another kind of, way that we are out in the community, but again, it's just a matter of making sure that people are aware of them and are able to participate in them. All right, so I encourage everyone to contact us. You can see me, Christine Manuck. My email is Christine@NOFA Mass, and there's Mike, our Vermont legislator, who is the development director. He's focused more on the foundation level grants, whereas I'm more on the state level grants, but while he is in session between now and June, I am going to be picking up some more of the foundation level grants as well. So really, I mean, if you have any thoughts, you have any questions, you have any ideas, like, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, because we would love to hear any ideas that you have and do what we can to support everyone. And just some acknowledgements. I want to acknowledge all of the farmers, or at least a portion of the farmers who have participated in our events, and our different grant projects, because really, we can't do the projects without them. We can't have a farmer learning cohort if we don't have farmers who are willing to take the time and come and meet when they're exhausted from being in the field all day and everything else. So thank you to them. And our funding acknowledgements, because again, this work wouldn't be possible without our funders.